Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2 second channel video. I'm going to do another PC archaeology video where we look at an old XT. Now, the last one I did on the second channel, it was a pretty long video. Hopefully this one is not so long, because I mean, these old PCs, they're all very similar, usually, so I don't really expect to find anything super interesting. I just want to see if the old thing works, and we'll just take a look at what's inside of it. So let me go grab the next machine we're going to look at. All right, here it is. So just like the last machine, it was an XT that was rescued by patron Justin. He also brought me the IBM 5170, which I've made several parts of a video on. But just like the last video, this XT machine here has no lid, so I got it just like this. This one's in a little bit worse condition than the other. You see these spots down here? That's rust. So this thing's a little more rough than the last one. But, you know, I'm sure it has some useful parts in it nonetheless. Like right off the bat, we see here Seagate St225, although where's the label? Normally there's a label right there, and it doesn't have one. It is a Seagate. I'm trying to see if the sticker has anything on it. It does not. This whole thing is quite dirty though, because it was stored, I think, in an attic or shed or something like that, and it had no lid. So it was just there. All right, if we take a look at the front here, you may recognize this, or maybe not, but I happen to know that this is a laser XT Turbo. And you can kind of tell by this little faceplate thing it has here, which has key lock, high speed mode, and a power LED. And that would shine through the front of the case. It also has a single floppy drive that has a B sticker on it, so someone pillaged the other drive maybe? The Seagate hard drive sits here. And actually, you know, I recognize this drive. Oh, I know I have high density drives in this same form factor. And I think the Amiga bridge card, the XT one for the 2000, came with a disk drive just like this. Just having a little tang here. This is Melon Tang, brought to me from Mexico. My parents visited me from Mexico recently and brought me a little care package, since I won't be going back to Mexico until October. I already have my flights booked, so I will be stocking up on lots and lots of Tang. All right, I think let's take out these various cards. Unfortunately, I can already see on this one here a battery that has leaked and it has dumped its contents onto the motherboard. So actually this thing may be not in as good shape as I thought. Maybe the hard drive floppy power supply will be the only usable parts in here. So first off, let's just yank these cards out. Being that this is a laser branded computer, some or all of these cards may be laser branded themselves. Okay, that screw is stripped. Come on out. There we go. I'm going to throw that screw out because it's already stripped. All right, first card. Let's see what this is. Well, this first card appears to be, I'd say, laser branded. Does say Video Technology, so that is the parent company, or that is Laser themselves. Well, I was thinking this might be an EGA card. Let's get this to focus here because there are two connectors, but I do not think that's the case because actually it says there CGA and MDA on that toggle switch. So I have a feeling one of these is probably monochrome and one of them is going to have color on it. We'll have to test that. It's actually kind of cool. That way is a way to like force the composite output to not have any color information in it. Let's check out this next card here. I'm going to skip over the one with the battery leakage. All right, so this here is the Seagate MFM controller card. It's an XT version. This is the one, and if you notice it has these notches here and these holes. you can get this in a hard card variant, meaning there's like a metal bracket that replaces the slot cover and connects here as well, and the hard drive mounts right on it, and then the cables go up to right there. I have had a computer or two that had that on it. Otherwise, this card is relatively nondescript, nothing particularly special. I think what's kind of nice about this particular card, if I recall, when you run the low-level format on this BIOS, like you do at what, GC800:5 in debug, I've kind of recall this lets you type in the heads and cylinders. So this works for not just a 20 meg hard drive or 32 meg hard drive like a lot of these old cards did. This is a bit more flexible, I think. So don't take my word for that, but some of these cards have that ability. And this one looks, obviously it's a bit later in the game for XT cards because it's all surface mount except for the two EPROMs. The original hard drive controller cards were full-length cards. They didn't have as much smarts as these do. So this probably works. All right, on to this multifunction card that has the battery leakage. So I'm gonna try to get this off. Wow, that is stuck on there. Very corroded connector. Did come off. Notice there's a piece of foam there. Does that show up in the camera? To keep this from banging into this metal cover here, which is kind of cool, I guess. Just during shipping or whatever. This card is not full length, so it doesn't go all the way to the front of the case here where it can, I'm trying to move it into view, hold on right here onto these slot covers. So this can wobble around. So that foam is kind of a nice touch. But let's check out the damage that this thing has caused. There it is. There it is. There is that leaky battery, and guess what? It's a VARTA. Wow, okay, so that's amazing, is that the corrosion from the battery, I mean, look at this, look, it's all over the slot connector, but it's all over the back as well. In fact, there's rust right here as well on the back slot cover. I like how the connectors are white. That's a little unusual, but I don't know if this computer was stored on its back facing down, so the leakage kind of went this way, or is that just capillary action that pretty much went everywhere? But yeah, that battery, oh, those things are they're so bad. Anyhow, this is a multifunction card. It looks like it's floppy, I guess, and dual serial. Maybe these are two serial ports here. In fact, this is probably one of the serial controller chips, and to get a second one, you needed another one there. There is a ribbon cable here, which that's for the floppy, but there's another one here, that's for the hard drive. So yeah, I guess there was no serial port hooked up to this thing at all. But it has a game port, printer port, two serial ports, and a floppy controller, and the clock is what destroyed everything. How nice. So if we take a look at the motherboard, let's zoom in a little bit here. Enhance, enhance. Things don't look so good down here. That is not great. Now, the last computer I looked at had a very similar problem, but I actually managed to clean that up by putting some navel jelly on there. And luckily the corrosion was light enough that it hadn't taken the plating off yet. So it kind of made it look okay again. This one, not so sure. But the navel jelly trick may work. Unfortunately though, there is also corrosion right here on the motherboard. Now, these RAM sockets are not populated because it's got all the memory right here. That's not ideal though. Each traces, the vias right there, they're looking very green. So there may be bad traces in there. There may not be. I mean, I could just clean this up on the surface and everything might be fine. This thing might work without an issue, this motherboard. But I certainly don't hold out hope whenever I see that. Now, from a memory perspective, we move this out of the way. None of the RAM down there is populated, but these are 256K chips, so there's 512K on this machine. I think these sockets right here, these would take probably 44, 64 chips. So you would put 4 of these in here, and that would give you that additional 128K to bring you up to 640. It's also possible that you could put RAM here. I don't really know the configuration. I think the manual is available for this particular system online. Looking at the back of the machine here, there's actually a button, and the button goes to the motherboard right there. So perhaps that's a reset button. If anyone ever had one of these machines, is that your recollection? If we just zoom in on the back here, there is a label, Laser XT Turbo. There it is, Video Technology Corporation. The power supply is going to be a very standard XT power supply, nothing special. And doing a quick gander at date codes on the various chips, I am seeing 1989. So talk about late. Talk about late. I mean, think about the original XT came out, well, the 5150 came out, which is the same speed as an XT, pretty early on. Was it like 1982, 84 was the 286, and this thing came out a lot later. Now, I assume this machine was pretty inexpensive, and I wouldn't be surprised if it can run at 8 megahertz or something like that. So you get a nice speed boost over the original XT, but it's still pretty slow. And it's a pretty heavy machine, so shipping probably cost quite a bit. I mean, to think about that. I'm gonna disassemble all the parts out of this thing so we can just take a closer look and then bench test it. All right, I've extricated all the parts, hard drive, floppy drive, some flock covers, even the speaker I took out. I have so many of those, but you never know. The motherboard and the cards are over here. I even saved the reset switch, or whatever this switch is, just because it would be interesting to tell. Oh, and the power supply, which is right here. Does say VTech PS150 on it. Hazardous area, do not remove this cover. You know I'm going to remove it. 150 watts, I guess. Multi-voltage, of course. Power good, pretty typical stuff. Just an XT power supply. Probably works just fine. So taking a look at this motherboard, it is certainly worse for wear. Check out those sockets. Ugh. Boy, XT motherboards usually are safe from leakage, but not in this case. I mean, that slot, that's a disaster right there. There's the processor there. It's a Siemens 8088. Not much else to report here. VTech, just like inside the Laser 128, consolidated a lot of the circuitry into these surface mount ICs, which I guess they're making in their own fab, or they contract with the fab to do it for them, but it's their own design. These look very much like the chips inside the Laser 128, at least from a package perspective. VTCL, I mean, it has their branding on it, both of them. Another one says VTech. So yeah, kind of cool. ROM BIOS is right there. It says AMI on it. I am assuming this chip here is the keyboard BIOS, math coprocessor slot, processor as we said. And right down here it says version A. Let's take a look at the bottom, see if that corrosion made its way down here. It doesn't appear so, actually. All looks good. There's a couple bodges right there. There. Also, this is kind of hilarious. Got a resistor array soldered on the bottom with a bodge. A couple other bypass caps added on for good measure down there in that corner as well. Yeah, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to soak this in navel jelly right in this area and in this area, try to get rid of that corrosion. Vinegar would do the trick as well, but it's very hard to get vinegar into card slots and like into sockets and things like that. The navel jelly, you can just soak it on there and it sits. It doesn't drain away, so it's very effective. It's very powerful though, and you have to absolutely make sure to wash every trace of it off after you're done using it. Otherwise it can cause permanent damage. It keeps working after the fact and will eat away the plating and stuff like that. But that should do the trick. Now this, I don't know if it's even worth trying to save this. it looks very rough. It might be savable though. It's worth trying. I'll put the navel jelly on that card as well. This is navel jelly here, which is basically just a powerful rust remover. It says it's phosphoric acid, avoid contact with skin and eyes. So relatively toxic stuff. Do not use on aluminum, chrome, stainless steel, or painted surface. Will remove bluing from steel. Wipe off painted surfaces immediately. Will remove paint. So yeah, anyhow, if I open this up, it's gonna be pink in color. There it is. I am going to take this battery and I'm going to cut this off. So I'll be right back. All right, for the motherboard, I'm gonna take this little paintbrush here and I'm gonna paint this on to the parts of the board. Well, you gotta really kind of gloop it on. Okay, I'm gonna pour it on to the part of the motherboard that needs it here, and then I'm gonna use the paintbrush just to make sure it gets down into the various little crevices and whatever. So I'm dabbing it basically. Anywhere where there's like a kind of a greenish color to the metal, it's gonna need this stuff. And over here on this slot, I'm just gonna pour it over the slot here. Oh, obviously put on more than it needs, but again, the brush is good for getting it down into the various little crevices. Now there's luckily multiple slots, so it's not like it's absolutely necessary that this slot work. I just want to stop any further corrosion. So that's what this stuff is really good at doing, is it's going to neutralize you know, you have this this very strong base. Because remember, the leaky NiCad is a base and acid, and this is phosphoric acid or whatever it said. This will neutralize this corrosion. So it's like vinegar, but vinegar is just much milder. You can use citric acid as well. It's just, this stuff works because it's this goopy consistency, so it doesn't just run off. Now it does sort of bubble up a little bit when it's working. You get little bubbles in there, sort of just like if you pour acid on baking soda, it has a reaction. Well, this has a similar reaction. It works relatively quickly, but it definitely takes time. So I'm gonna let this sit on here. Now, for how long you leave this sit, I don't know. Anyhow, what I'll probably do is just check on this periodically, come back and take a look. And then eventually I will give this board a thorough washing, lots and lots of soap and water to make sure I get off all of this acid. All right, and for this card, you know, maybe I'll just soak this in vinegar. You know, I don't know. There's a lot of damage on this. Like, I see a lot of this ground plane is eaten all the way up here too. This board is in poor shape. Yeah, what are we gonna do here? Oh, the back's a mess as well. Maybe vinegar. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna get a little bit of plastic wrap and I'll place this in the plastic wrap and I'll just pour the vinegar over it. As for this stuff, is make sure you don't get it on your hands. So I'm gonna go wash this bottle off because it has dripped down the side. Here's the card. I put some paper towels, plastic wrap, and then I was able to pour a bunch of vinegar over it. So it's sort of bathing in the vinegar. And there's enough in here that it is sort of covering the card. I may still need to go over it with the navel jelly, especially on the slot connector, but that's good enough to kind of hopefully start the process. I'm just gonna move the disk drive and I will set this card up here. There we go. Just make sure that the plastic is up so it doesn't drain off onto my desk. Let's check on this. I see lots of bubbling. By the way, if you want to buy cheap paintbrushes like this came from the dollar store here in the US, Dollar Tree, I think. It was like a bag of 10 or 20 of them. So they're basically disposable because they often can get kind of messed up after using them with navel jelly. Although since this is entirely plastic, it's probably going to be totally fine. I'm going to paint some of this on the slot connector here. Some of this pink navel jelly since I have excess, and actually there's quite a bit of green right here. I'm going to paint that on there as well. Of green corrosion inside these connectors. So perhaps painting this in there will do the trick. Okay, so I just gave the motherboard a wash. I think it was on 20 minutes. Maybe I had the navel jelly on there. Look at the slots. I'm not actually sure which slot was the one that had the gunk in it. I think it was this one here where my thumb is on. I think the slots came out perfect. That's going to work. The RAM area also is really good, although it's not perfect. There's still a little bit of the green crusty on this one socket. So I'm going to reapply the navel jelly just to this one socket, and then I'll give the board another wash. This board here is still bubbling away. Vinegar is not as strong as the navel jelly, so it takes longer. But I did paint some of that navel jelly into this area here. It's sort of diluted though, but it's definitely working. A lot of the green crusties that were on the pins here, I start to see gold again. So that's cool. And this slot connector here, that's looking perfect again. So, hey, this board may work again. Who knows? I mean, some of these traces, though, I mean, there's big gaps. So you just never know. Once the copper starts to get eaten away under the solder mask, it may go bad. It may be open. So you'd have to sort of trace out every single, via to the pins on the sockets, so the chips, I mean, and run bodge wires if there's any issues. So unfortunately, once this battery leakage happens, I have no idea about the longevity of these boards. Now, things that I've fixed and got working again, they work, but in 20 years, will they still work? Or will this corrosion just slowly eat away and kill the copper? I don't know. All right, pass number 2 has been completed. Motherboard looks okay. It was this slot, I think, that was the bad one. And you can see it looks a little weirdly misaligned, but certainly is okay. Over here, it's also pretty good. None of that green crusty is left. Now it looks a little, say, wet here. It's Deoxit, and I put some on the slot as well. Weirdly enough, some of the contacts on the RAM there is kind of a reddish or pink color, similar to the navel jelly. Not sure what that's all about, but believe me, I scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed with a brush, soap, water. There's no residue left of the navel jelly. And this is the card, and it's certainly looking better in that area. I mean, better is relative. Solder mask has all come off of here, so that's the plating that's now visible. The slot connector is looking pretty good, although I think some of the copper is now exposed a little bit under the plating. If we look inside those connectors, it's kind of green looking down in there. Could be worse though, but there's quite a lot of potential damage underneath the solder mask there. It's bubbling up there. Obviously this is all peeled off, but yeah, the solder mask is bubbling off. A lot of it peeled off on the back. See this? That's not good. That is not good at all. When you see stuff like that, it doesn't mean it's ruined. It just means that there's definitely some corrosion under there. So anyhow, enough about this. Let's give this stuff a test. We'll start with the motherboard. I'm better prepared this time. Of course, I have my postcard, but I also have, and I just built this up, we have an XT IDE card. I need to order some more of the compact flash things that can plug straight into this, but so for now, it's got an SD card adapter, but that is a working card there, so that's good for booting. 8-bit VGA card. This did have that CGA card, and we'll test that in a sec, but just for getting this working. And I do have this floppy controller and a 3.5-inch floppy drive. We can get that working. So let's plug this in. Oh, and I have my power supply here, the This one I've been using for all my testing. We'll test this one in a second. Here we go. All right. Now you don't have any postcodes, dash dash. That's normal for an XT. But I did see normal looking activity on those LEDs there. Some of those are like signal wires. I have the speaker connection here. Let's hook this up to the speaker. Which is where exactly? Okay, so this was the original speaker. It had these two wires connected. I kind of feel like it was these two pins over here on the left. Yep, there's a beep. So this thing seems to be working. Let me put in a VGA card. Let's see what kind of image we get. I'm just gonna stick some mouse pads underneath this thing just to raise it off the desk a little bit so that the cards don't, the card slot bracket thing doesn't hit the desk. Now, one thing about XT motherboards, there's no BIOS menu. You set everything up with these dip switches, RAM plus the type of video card. So this may not work because it might be configured for CGA or monochrome. So we'll see what happens when it comes to displaying a video. I'll need to go look up this Turbo XT motherboard. Hopefully I can find the switch settings. Oh, wait, look, there it is. It's actually working. Eagle 2 VGA BIOS, and then central point software, one diskette drive, of course, diskette error. Let me connect up a keyboard to this thing. XT keyboard, of course. I gotta say, pretty impressive. This thing is a survivor. Control-Delete. Oh, it's not working, but this could be set for AT. It's really hard to tell with this keyboard. Let's see here. It is acting up. Let's turn off the power. Try again. Keyboard error. Interesting. I am not getting any love with this keyboard. This is definitely an XT keyboard, but everything I push just causes this thing to beep. So I wonder what exactly is going wrong here. I do kind of have to wonder if the laser used some type of a proprietary keyboard. Is that possible? Does anyone recall if that's the case? I'm gonna have to do a little bit of Googling for the Laser XT, see if it talks about that. Because if it can't use a standard XT keyboard, it's possible the keyboard BIOS can be switched out, but that's severely limiting for the usefulness of this motherboard. Well, I found the original manual for this computer, well, the machine it came out of, and unfortunately, I can't really tell, it doesn't say specifically what the deal is with the keyboard, but it does say that keyboard error 2FFF or anything with the 2 says the keyboard itself didn't pass diagnostic tests, and the solution is to replace the keyboard. Well, I mean, this keyboard works for sure, and yet it's saying that it's failing. So I can only assume that means that the Laser XT needs the original laser keyboard, which incidentally looks a little different than the standard layout. It actually has up, down, left, right with like a key in the center. So instead of an inverted T here, it's got a plus arrangement. But anyways, it doesn't seem like it works. So I guess, even though this motherboard does work, I can't test any further than this. What a shame. Also, as a side note, in the manual, I figured out that the button that was plugged into here on the back of the machine was absolutely the reset button. So kind of funny, it was like an afterthought. And in addition, this is 512K, as I mentioned, and sure enough, to go to 640K, you install 4 extra 4464 chips here to go to 640K. And this is for parity. These 2 chips and these 2 chips are for parity for this memory. But the funny thing is this area over here can actually take, I guess, 1024K of EMS memory. EMS is extended memory or expanded memory. It's like an XT memory expansion thing where this memory is mapped into the high address space and bank switched. And you can have up to 1 megabyte of this. And lots of programs for the XT did support this type of memory, but it's kind of cool. This is actually right on the motherboard, and it would take, like 41 256 chips. So 256K times 1 bit. So you get 1 megabyte plus the 640K here. And that's quite a lot of memory on this one motherboard. And oh, this does run at 10 megahertz and 4.77 megahertz as well. So that's kind of cool. Oh, and then the reason why the video card worked, the VGA card, is because by default, the video card that was in this machine, this one here, actually has the BIOS integrated on the card for both monochrome and CGA. Typically that is built into the BIOS chip on the motherboard, like the original IBM PC, XT, and those ones have BIOS built in for the monochrome and CGA cards. They're not on the cards themselves. This one is, and it did say in the manual, if you're going to use this card in another computer, you have to set a jumper, which I guess is this one right here, to tell it to disable the onboard BIOS so that then the motherboard BIOS can take over, because it would create a bus conflict, most likely. That's good to know. This card as well, for the floppy, clock, whatever, definitely is the original laser card. I mean, it has a sticker there, but it came in this computer. So if you know about this particular computer and slash motherboard, and if it works with certain keyboards, maybe not this one, please let me know. And incidentally, I tried this both in AT and XT mode, and neither worked. It just produces the same beeping. So anyhow, okay, yes, I'm gonna move on and we'll test out the peripherals and this hard drive. Maybe that's gonna have some interesting stuff on it. All right, I broke out another XT motherboard. This is one that Phil from the UK sent in, and it does work. It's booted up into DOS. I have PC DOS 3.2. Interesting. 3.5-inch hard floppy drive, is connected to this floppy controller. Strangely enough, when I plug in my XT IDE, it does not boot up properly. It just sort of hangs at the boot screen, which is weird because I've configured this to work on XTs. So I don't know what's up with that. But anyhow, whatever, it doesn't work. But it boots off the floppy, and that's all that matters. This machine has 640K of RAM, but whatever, it works. So let's power up this hard drive. It's an ST225R, so it's an RLL drive. The case was covering the label originally. That's why I couldn't see it, but RLL, it's very similar to an ST225 regular, except this one, I don't know, it's certified for RLL encoding. Not really sure what difference that makes. But that means this thing holds, instead of 20 megabytes, it holds 32 or something about there. Let's see if it even spins up. Whoa. Doesn't sound super good though. I guess it sounds okay right now that it's running. Okay, let me grab the cables to plug in the controller. Seagate controller, here are the original cables. Let's just reconnect this up. Boy, these cables are dusty. Oh, Seagate, you don't even write pin 1. Actually, if it doesn't have anything written on it, the pin 1 is often a square solder pad and the rest are round. So these are square. It's not easy to tell, but that would mean I have the cables backwards. So let me just flip these around. It's a little precarious, but this should work. Let's power this on. It just sounds weird when it starts spinning. It's kind of, I don't know. But it sounds totally fine once it's spun up. Alrighty, it's counting. And by the way, I'm using the same keyboard still. It's counting up the RAM. It does it twice, and there's no way to skip it. This keyboard does totally work, though. All right, one hard drive present. Oh, it's booting off the floppy. Let's reboot and take that out. Did seem to detect the hard drive. ST225R. R like a pirate. R. Oh, it sounds like it's working. It sounds like it's working. It actually is working. Wow, Laser XT speed control utility, speed control unavailable on this machine. Well, yeah. Did it lock up? It locked up the computer as well. Let's reboot. I'll try to abort out of the auto exec by pressing Control C. Cool, another working Seagate drive. That's amazing. Now it's booting. Terminate batch job. Yes, indeed. All right, there it is. What's on here? DOS is just copied right into the root directory. Ouch. Okay, hopefully the camera is in focus and I think I've locked the exposure. So let's poke around on this hard drive a little bit. See what's on here. Look at all that DOS stuff. So first of all, we'll try to look at what directories are on here. We have menu, WordPerfect, FT, whatever that is, PCW, and Bankmate. So let's go to menu first of all. Nothing in there. Okay, WordPerfect. Okay, this actually has WordPerfect, and it looks like there are letters and stuff like that, or maybe some amount of personal stuff. So we won't look at WordPerfect because WordPerfect, pretty run-of-the-mill. I think everyone has sort of seen that. What is this FT program? Form tool, huh? Let's run that. Form tool 2.01 Block Development Corporation. All right. I think this is a program for, you know, creating forms and filling them out, and or maybe it just prints them. Print list of forms. Oh, I think it wants to actually print, which I don't have a printer, obviously. Delete from disk. Select file to edit. Let's see, it's listing the forms directory. Oh, look at all this. So these are different forms from the 80s. They're all samples. So it doesn't appear that there are any non-sample forms. Look, there's a form, Form 1040. This is a tax form for the US here. I guess in 1987 or something. Wow, look at this. Schedule A. So I guess this lets you, can you actually fill this out? Let's see. State and local. I'm trying to move over here. Yeah, you can actually enter in values on here. I wonder if it totals it and stuff. No, it doesn't seem to do any of the smarts. So anyhow, all right, well, relatively boring when it comes to nostalgia, but I think from a computer perspective, programs like this, they were pretty useful. Save this form? No. Okay, oops, let's see what else is on here. So we have FT, that was Form Tools, PCW. Well, there are two programs, ED and PR, so let's run ED first. PC Write, registration number, copyright Quicksoft. Okay, I guess this is like a shareware program because it's registered for $89 and you get a manual if you pay extra, Seattle, Washington. And the other program in here was PR. Let's see what this does. Print maybe. Yep, printer is ready. Okay, so that's the printer. So word processor. Okay, next up, Bankmate. Nothing, empty directory. So I guess that is it. There's not a whole lot going on this computer. There's a menu here. Let's run that. Oh, you know what this is? The setup menu for the Laser 128. I have to reboot out of this to get out of here. The XT Turbo motherboard in the manual talked about a setup menu to let you control some of the system functions or format disks, stuff like that. So I think someone must have just copied the Laser XT Turbo. Oh dear, disk boot failure. You know, not all is lost. I probably need to run SpinWrite on this drive, SpinWrite 2, and I'll let it sort of process the drive. I'll just format it as a new drive. Yep, look at that, not working. I'll reboot again with the floppy drive inserted and see if this PC DOS can read the disk or the hard drive. I've really found as time goes by, these things do work fine. I mean, when they're functional to this point, but the fact that it's having trouble reading the drive, okay, I can still read it and after booting off the floppy disk. The fact that it can still read it means that the mechanics are working, but it's almost like a full low-level format with SpinWrite will bring this drive back to life and it will work properly again. Okay, how about this floppy drive here? Does this drive work? There's the front close-up. Oh yeah, chin on. It's a chin on drive. Okay, cool. Oh, that's not good. You hear that? Well, this is an induction motor, so it has permanent magnets, and there are coils under here. And I've had this happen before. Little metal fragments have gotten in here. You know what? It seems fine. I'm gonna hit it with some compressed air. But well, yeah, because there's magnets under there, what happens is if any metal dust is floating around the computer, it can go inside there, and then it causes that crunchy noises. Seems okay right now after blowing some air in it. I wouldn't be surprised if I could take out these 3 Phillips screws here and lift this off. The coils are going to be on the PCB, and this disc here is what's got the permanent magnets on it. So basically it's kind of an AC induction motor. I think I'm using the right terms. And that allows it to have very precise speed control. It's like a variable frequency motor. Seems okay right now. Anyway, so let's just test it out. If it starts to make horrible crunchy noises again, I'll try taking it apart. All right, ready for testing? Sounded like it seeked a little bit. One thing that's interesting about the BIOS on this motherboard is it doesn't actually seek the disk drives. It will just try to boot off this. So we should see the LED come on. Now, I think this is a boot disk I was using for some recent testing, 360K boot disk. Is it? Oh no, this is high density. This was 5170 testing. Disk failure. You know, it didn't even try anything at all. I have DOS 3.3 here. Before I put that in, I am gonna stick a cleaning disk in the drive. I don't feel like sticking my working fresh disk in there. We'll just use the good old cleaning floppy here. It's getting a little crusty in the middle here. Come on. It's like some dust bunnies on there. Does spin. Disk boot failure. It is not even attempting to boot. So what's the deal with that? Let's see if there's any jumpers on here. There's nothing, no jumpers. There's a termination resistor, which is in place. But I don't see any, oh, there are jumpers right there on the side. Okay. Let's see if I can make heads or tails of what's what. Okay, I see. RM. It's set for drive select 1, which is exactly what it needs to be set to for this thing to do anything. Let's make sure I was plugged in with the right part of the cable. I was, right? Let's try that one more time, just in case. Oh, there we go, it's working. I guess I just didn't have the cable on all the way, or maybe I put it on the wrong one. Maybe I had it on the B drive spot on the cable. Okay, in with DOS 3.3. Let's see, do you boot up? Sure sounds like it's working. Look at that. I love it, these things are survivors. Hard drive works, floppy drive works. I mean, the motherboard was working, I just don't have the right keyboard for it. We have a working floppy drive. That is awesome. Okay. Will this very sad floppy / serial parallel card work? Might as well give it a try. I mean, the connector looks okay. At least it's not all green and crusty. So let's just remove this known working card here. I've plugged the 3.5 inch into this thing. Let's plug it in. Will it work? I don't know. I'm kind of feeling like it's probably going to work fine. Here we go. Computer power's up. Is that a good sign? Yes, I think it is. It's seeking the floppy drive. Oh, but disk boot failure. And this was the boot disk we were just using, and it definitely worked. And now it doesn't. So that's not surprising, actually. The floppy controller is kind of working, but there's probably some bad traces on this card that are preventing it from reading the disk properly. So there you go. When there's this much battery damage on something, it really can be hard to troubleshoot and fix. There just is going to be so many problems, and a card like this, it's just not worth even trying to fix. So this will be relegated to spare parts. I'm just gonna draw on here and put an X and say bad. But the fact that the traces are all falling apart on here means that I assume over time this card will just get worse and worse. And second to last is this video card. Now the power supply is the last thing I'll be testing. I guess, let's see, do I set this jumper or not set this jumper? I'm gonna test this with the jumper in place, which means it should have the BIOSes working. And I think if this motherboard here is configured for EGA or VGA, that's fine, because EGA, VGA, like the card that's right here in there, has its own BIOS, and so does this. So we're gonna try it this way, see what happens. This card has no corrosion on it, so there's really no reason for me to believe that there's actually a problem with it. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna plug it into the RetroTink, and I'm gonna use the composite output on it. So here we go. Oh, wait, there we go. It's like no signal. Hey, there it is, look at that. I just wanna see if moving this cable to the other jack also produces a video image. It does indeed. Not sure if it's sharper, but definitely I'm gonna go on my hunch that one of these is monochrome and one of them is color. We'll see once it boots up if we can figure out which is which. Okay, so I'm booting up the Christmas card demo. It's really slow because this machine, I think it's running at 4.77 megahertz right now. But yeah, monochrome out of the top jack. Let's move to the bottom jack here. Also monochrome. Could be something I have set on here, maybe? You know, I don't know, actually. No. The RetroTink should be displaying color there. Slightly different too, like this one's darker. So I can't really explain that, but there you go, monochrome. So I'm not really sure what's up with that. Why are there two jacks and what's the difference? It might explain it in the manual, but needless to say, this card definitely works. Actually, looking at the card again, it says mono right there for the top one, and it says color right there. So I wonder why we weren't getting any color. And I definitely had it set for CGA, so that's the position in the down position. Either way, yeah, okay, cool. So a working dual video card. And the final thing to test, this power supply. So let's remove my known good one. This could cause damage to the computer, who knows, right? Oh, actually, you know what? This type of connector, this does not fit on this motherboard. It's a slightly different type of connector on the original motherboard. This has the very standard connector type that IBM used. That's what this power supply supports. That's what AT's used. This one, on the other hand, uses a slightly different connector. I can plug this power supply, my bench one here, into the other motherboard, the XT Turbo one, but I don't think it works in the other direction. So I'll just grab the XT Turbo one because it does power up with the video card. It's just the keyboard doesn't work. So we'll test with this thing here, because this will connect up without any issue. It's a pretty stiff connection, but it does go on. There it is. We'll start with just this postcard installed. I have the power plugged into this. Let's turn it on. Let's see if any smoke comes out. I'll try to angle this so you can see the power LEDs on there. Hey, that appears to be functional. We're on the 5-volt rail here on the multimeter. 5.02, that's pretty sweet. And here we are on the 12-volt rail. 11.9, that's also great too. Considering it's not even loaded down with a hard drive, that is pretty spectacular. I can tell by the way the LEDs were flashing on the postcard that this machine was booting, so I don't really need to plug this in to a video card just to see it working. Wow, it's hard to get this connector off there. Jeez. All right, summary time. So the motherboard had battery damage, but it does appear to work. Just I don't have a keyboard that works with it. So that's kind of sucky. It could be that if I do a full RAM test, would say check it, there could be other issues, or maybe there's, most likely actually, this extended memory is not going to work, but at least the main memory works. And I would imagine it would upgrade to 640K without too much trouble. And it is a pretty fast motherboard, well, as far as 8088 XTs go. So that's kind of nice. We have the power supply, which totally does work. It's just we're left with the different connector type that doesn't really work on all motherboards, or maybe it would if I push down hard enough, I don't know. We have the hard drive card. This is an RLL hard drive card that completely works, so that's pretty sweet. These aren't super common. We have the video card that seems to work fine. I didn't fully test it with monochrome and CGA, but I have no reason to believe that it wouldn't work with a digital connection. So pretty cool. There is the 360K Chinon drive that totally works. So that's cool because floppy drives like that, you know, aren't super common anymore. So it's nice to have an extra. And then we have this, which is a Seagate St225r, which is an RLL certified hard drive. And it does appear to work at least mostly. I'll need to run this through the SpinRite full low-level format, which of course will take quite a long time. Or I could actually just do the low-level format with this controller card, and that'll probably do the trick as well, since I'm not trying to preserve the data that's on here. And really, besides the case, this is the only other thing I won't be keeping. Well, I'll be throwing this into the parts bin. The case will be recycled. So, you know, because obviously without the lid and stuff, and it's got a lot of rust and stuff in there, so it's not really useful. But this card, yeah, unfortunately doesn't seem to work. But hey, that's what you get with serious battery leakage. You get damage. And this card had a lot of it. So I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you didn't, you know what to do, all that thumbs downy stuff and second channel videos. So a subscription would be very much appreciated. Thanks to my patrons. Thanks to Justin, who brought me this computer in the first place. He is one of my patrons. He rescued it in Seattle and brought it down to Portland for me. And I guess that's going to be it. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.